Hey guys, welcome to another New World video. In today's video I want to talk about the state of the game, or more specifically, how we might fix it. The reason I'm making this video is simply to provide honest and simple feedback to the dev team at AGS, as well as get people talking and thinking in a more constructive and positive way. I have noticed lately, myself included here, that as a community we have started to become so frustrated with the development choices lately that we are becoming negative and borderlining in some cases on toxic, and this is not a good thing. My objective in making videos has always been to work with the community to share ideas, strategies, and work to improve both players' experiences as well as the game in general. My intention was never to give anyone the impression I hate the game. Clearly I don't. As a person who has played the game for almost 5,000 hours, taking the time to create content surrounding my experiences in the game, I can assure you, I have nothing but passion when it comes to New World. The problem, however, is that lately my passion has manifested itself in the form of what's coming across as hate or anger, when it would be better described simply as frustration. So what I want to do today is something different. In this video, I would like to talk about some things that could happen in my opinion as well as the opinions of the community to repair New World. Not only the game, but the relationship the devs have with the community as well. Now, I don't plan to blindly speak for the community. I have both wrote out my thoughts, as well as scattered the forums, Reddit, various discords, and messaged other players. I have compiled a collection of things that I think need to happen, as well as we hope will happen. So, let's get into it. So a good place to begin would be with the in-game features. Things that the average MMO player has grown to expect from any AAA title that they log into. I will say going into this that I am aware that New World was originally intended to be a survival type game. So it will be difficult to implement some of these things. However, I do also think that it will be important for them to figure out a way, regardless of how difficult it is, if they want the game to succeed in the long term. First, we need to have gear set storage. With the number of trade skills, gather skills, different wards, and of course PvP, there simply has to be a way for us to store and quickly access these sets separately. Many people who play New World live busy adult lives, so having to dig around in your various storage sheds to find pieces of gear in order to do a simple task just wastes too much time and leads to lost gear and frustration. This absolutely needs to be a priority quality of life feature that has to hit the game sooner rather than later. Many people put forward great ideas like mannequins and stuff like that, but if that's too intense, something as simple as implementing the sorting that you have added to the market into our storage would be a great midway temporary solution, allowing us to then quickly search our storage by perks, allowing us to easily find the gear we are after. We don't expect it to be perfect overnight, and not all solutions have to be massive game-changing things. And of course I know this has already been announced, but I am just reiterating it, because it will hurt the game in a serious way if it is late. That brings me to the next thing I really think needs to be changed, and that is the storage system itself. The storage system in New World is something we would expect to find in a game like Ark Survival or Rust. It is clearly left over from a previous iteration of the game and is nothing even close to what people expect and want to see in an MMO. The crafting system in this game requires us to have massive amounts of materials on hand, or of course stored for leveling. But with our storage being so limited in both weight and space for unique items, this can really feel, well, really bad. And on top of that, as I said before, we are so limited by an outdated search and filter system. It all just ends up leading to a ton of unneeded frustration. If having the weight restriction is so important because the developers really like the chests and home ownership in relation to storage, that's fine. You could even use this to solve two issues. Having the shed set to hold either much larger stacks with no weight restrictions, or a much higher weight restriction but only for materials, and have the chests in our homes for gear and weapons only. You know, something like that. These are just ideas, but clearly what's happening now is just not the answer. We basically just need a completely better way to filter and search our separate storages for different item types. Whatever the solution, our storage needs a rework. Another thing I believe needs a rework is of course the trophies. Now, I am not on team get rid of the trophies. I love them. However, what I don't love is how the function works when it comes to changing them. I am fine limiting us to 5 active max trophies per house. But why can't we hang them all, then have a toggle in our bio window to turn them on and off? This would be so much easier than having to fast travel around the map to all of our houses every time we need to change our trophies. Another thing in the game that I feel needs some love is the character stat page, or I guess the paper doll. The amount of information that we are given about our character on this page is way too limited. We need a way to see what benefits we are receiving, wards, luck, resists, including acid, a complete breakdown, so that we can easily total our gather luck or squash myths that amulets provide negative luck and stuff like that. Being able to track this information is important to players, and always has been across all MMOs. And for our characters, another huge improvement to the game would be a barbershop or something like that would allow us to change our character's appearance. Even add some stuff to the in-game shop if that motivates you, and make some stuff exclusive, that's fine, but please add this feature. It's these little things that are often looked at as stupid that in fact keep people playing. And of course, along with this comes the transmog system. This needs to happen on schedule, and it really needs to allow us to dye the skins in the shop. And before we hear another speech about how difficult it is, let's not forget, there was a bug only a month ago that allowed people to dye their shield skins. So let's replicate that bug to the rest of the skins. Now of course I'm being a little bit silly here, but really? Now let's talk about why I feel a lot of players leave. First, let's look at companies. When the game first released, it was exciting. The idea that we could take and hold territories and work together as a company, building friendships, planning attacks, and all that comes along with it. Well, then reality set in, of course. Only very few companies of the very top % of players would ever actually interact with this system, leaving everyone else in a place where frankly a company doesn't even really much matter. This is where I feel the game could grow in a big way, giving companies an opportunity to become more competitive while still creating the cohesion and friendships required to actually even begin to compete at a war level. Like one thing would be company housing. And you may be asking yourself, well, how would that help? Well, other games have implemented great systems that achieve this, like for example in Star Trek Online. As the company, or the fleet in this case, but we will say company to keep it simple. As the company works together, farms, completes objectives, and all sorts of things, very difficult projects are completed. And when these are completed, stations in the company house are upgraded. And the cool thing here, the station upgrading system already exists in New World. And when you upgrade these stations, you then unlock access to perks or gear that do not exist anywhere else. They can't be crafted, can't be farmed, and then people in the company who have contributed can then craft the gear in these stations. And before you say this will be exploited and companies will simply unlock these, then sell spots to craft stuff, making it all stupid. No, that's the beauty of this system done correctly. Whenever a company member takes part in a required activity for the project, which could be anything from PvP bounty hunt to PvE missions to kill 300 ancients or even gather 200 ironwood, anything, they will receive a company trade token or something, which of course will be bound. These tokens will be a required material in crafting the items at the stations. This then encourages people to log in and take part in these activities, as well as encourage companies to work together to achieve higher stations to make the better gear. The key here is to make this something they can't achieve in an afternoon. That's the trouble. Things are moving a little too fast recently. Anyway, just one idea among many. Another big thing that would help the game to grow and be fun again is to stop adding new features and forgetting about the old ones. For example, the Group Finder tool. It was a great addition, but it was clearly not finished and still needs a ton of refining and work. I do think it needs to go a lot further, like add a function to it to allow for random pub groups, where it just selects 5 members by desired role and throws them in. Having the ability to check gear score and wards and all is fine for higher mutation runs, but when it comes to regular old Genesis runs, why not just toss 5 new players in and let them play? Territory standing is another old feature that we were told would be getting reworked, and it needs it in a big way. With the tax changes to housing and the fees on benches, most of the perks now are very underwhelming. And on top of that, so many players are almost max level before they realize how permanent it really is. So we desperately need a way to respec these selections later, even if it's on a cooldown or something. One of my favorite parts of the game when it first released was the faction quests and vendors, but as the game evolved and matured, these quickly became completely dead content, which is a shame considering the core of the game centers around the factions. Having this whole system mean nothing now just doesn't make sense. And I know some people will say, that's why they added the PvP track. Well, if the PvP track was added to be a step-up replacement for the faction vendor, I will again say why. No one is going to grind at this stage of the game for 520 gear, not even a player, so why does it exist? They need to completely rework these vendors, have them offer skins that are faction related, even change the old faction 520 gear to skins instead of gear. Something. I want a reason to choose to waste my time grinding these tokens. Now, for PvP. This is an important aspect of the game, and I'm so tired of this silly back and forth between PvP and PvE players. It has reached levels that are just ridiculous. The reality is simple. Some people enjoy PvE and some enjoy PvP, and we can't ignore either. The PvP community needs more diversity in play, additional maps for OPR, and no, it will not split the queues, that's a silly excuse. Have them rotate like mutations do. They need more of a reason to play 3v3, like a real ranking system with rewards and titles associated, and a season format would probably work best. And they need a reason to world PvP. Like, there has to be something added to the game that pushes people to flag besides luck. Because frankly, luck in this game is ridiculous to begin with. Like some sort of lucrative daily quest system with bounties on world PvP play, or something that encourages it. Have hot zones that change in max level zones, where you're always flagged in that zone on X day or something. And while we're on the topic of PvP, we desperately need separate PvP and PvE balancing. The current system, where if you nerf something for PvP, it completely makes it unusable in PvE, just doesn't work, and vice versa. And related to that, why does gear roll with Resilience, Shirking Fort, and Ancient Ward? This doesn't make sense to me. The crafting is RNG enough. The PvP perk buckets need to be separate from the PvE. It doesn't make the gear harder and more fun to get. It makes people rage and quit is what it does. Now, I could go on forever about features we all want and wish for, but let's now step into the realm of reality for a moment and talk about things that need addressing immediately. Not new features or quality of life improvements, simply bugs, things that are broken and have been for some time and need addressed, and addressing them will go a long way in making people feel a lot more content while they're playing. For one, elite chests, why do they not give any arrows above iron? This has been like this since release and doesn't make any sense. And the alchemy stockpiles, not giving above regular motes. I mean, there's nothing in the game like killing a 67 gold elite to access a stockpile that gives 3 earth motes and 1 healing potion. This of course needs to change immediately. They need to fix broken tooltips on items. Like one that stands out for me, the major fishing trophy has said 9,000 luck on it since release, when it provides of course 5,000 now, and it has for months since the trophies were changed. The encumbrance music buff, the patch notes stated it gives 200 to 1000, but in the game it gives 20 to 100. So which is it supposed to be? Is it broken or were the patch notes wrong? This has never been directly addressed. And I won't even get into the Cutlass Keys Fort if you know what I'm talking about. I could again go on and on. I'm sure every player has a list of persistent bugs. And in closing, I would just like to touch on some of the changes I would like to see in the way the developers handle and communicate with the community. And this is not meant to be negative. I have a great deal of respect for the devs. I know dealing with a community that can be very toxic at times, as well as balancing that with your corporate overlords, is no small feat. And this to them is their job, not a game they love in a lot of cases like the players. So I recognize they are doing the best they know how. But there are some areas where they could improve, at least from my perspective. For one, the PTR feedback. I know they say they read it, and maybe they do. However, I've taken part in every PTR we have ever had, and I have sifted through the PTR feedback and tested things all along the way as I've reported in many of my videos. And almost every big issue we have experienced after a PTR cycle and the patch goes live has been reported on the PTR feedback. It isn't some new bug that cropped up in the live ecosystem we were not expecting. So going through this feedback actively, testing and fixing these issues before live would go a long way in rebuilding player faith. Another huge thing that would help would be to make the devlogs more of a hype machine. Keep it positive, show concept art, sneak peeks. We aren't asking you to promise things or even give a time frame, but talking about amazing features you have thought of and are working on would be great. All it would take in reality to keep the community happy is clarity, honesty, and a little hope. Sharing bits with us about the future would give people the feeling that New World is here to stay, not dying. This whole narrative that's been created that the company is letting the game die is what's scaring off players. MMOs require huge investments of people's time, and people simply don't want to invest that time in a game if the idea is that it'll be gone in a year. And for adding a door, this made me laugh, because we know it's super hard to add a door. I mean, it sounds simple, but we have all noticed there are no doors in New World, only doorways. I would also like to thank Black XP for his post on the forums, where he has compiled a much larger list that would be impossible to put into a video. This thread helps shed light on a lot of what the community wants. And I want to make it clear to everyone, this video was long and may seem like I am hating, but I am not. I am simply trying to engage the community in conversation. Conversation that is positive and constructive. Yes, we all want the game to be better, but what does better look like truly? Let me know in the comments. And as always guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.